Great. Warm welcome. Welcome back from lunch. We're going to discuss another interesting topic. I just came back from the multi-connectivity topic, which is a topic that I very like. And this one, something that I write a lot about on LinkedIn. IoT is hard, but for a moment I will keep my opinion like here and not share it yet. Um, but before doing that, let's do a quick introduction round for the new people in the crowd. My name is Afzal. I work for Deutsche Telekom, a corporate startup called IoT Creators in narrowband IT and LTM connectivity for 7 years now. And now I hand over to Lubo.
Lyubo. I'm Lyubomir Yanchev. I'm from a company called MClimate. What we do is we try to decarbonize buildings. We create devices that retrofit different appliances like radiators or fan coil units we're manufactured here in the EU. We are based in Bulgaria, Sofia, and I think that's enough for now.
My name's Daniel Quant from Multitech. Multitech, we've been in this LoRa game now for 10 years. We were the original programmable LoRaWAN gateway, and we also got modules and sensors. We work with typically the leading companies in most every market segment in order to simplify their connectivity. And of course, many of you buy our products through distribution to create your solutions.
Cool. Thanks, folks. My name is Paddy Gogin. I'm the Senior Vice President of Blues Wireless previously, for those of you who've been around for some time. We are a wireless IoT company. We help people who make physical products, physical devices, turn those into smart connected services. I'll stop there because we'll probably cover more of it, but pleased to be on this one.
Thanks for the introduction. So let's just start with a very simple question. Is IoT hard, Lubo?
No, not at all. It's so easy for everybody. I mean, all the projects you hear, it's only success after success. Of course, I'm kidding. IoT is very hard, and I think that not just IoT. IoT is a general term. There are many technologies inside, and that's okay. But LoRaWAN, it's designed for multiple types of use cases, which is okay and is designed well. But it just brings this level of complexity that sometimes it's not required for projects. And I think what makes IoT hard is a few things. First, every IoT project have gateways. Have hardware, but gateways as well. And hardware is not easy. Hardware you can start making some prototypes pretty quickly, but the hardware at scale, hardware that is reliable, hardware that doesn't fail in the field, this is the hard part, at least from my perspective. And it's not that it's rocket science. It's way easier than that. But I feel like the reliability aspect is often overlooked, and this is something that really allowed us to scale. We have more than 500,000 devices out there in the field working, saving CO2, saving energy, or getting some data. And I think IoT is hard, and there are a lot of aspects that are hard in IoT, from device to the gateway, to the whole architecture, through the LNS, through the whole value chain of different stakeholders trying to add value in some way, which sometimes makes partnerships hard as well. Yeah.
So definitely the comment on hardware. We make millions of units of hardware per year, not easy to do at scale. But then once the hardware is developed, how to integrate that into the system that wants the data coming off of that asset. Not easy to do at scale, easy enough when you've got one or two devices on a table and you configure it, but not easy to do at scale. And there are so many different platforms out there. There's cloud platforms, there's control systems, building automation platforms, SCADA systems. Everybody's got a customized way of how they want their data to get into their platforms. And a lot of that is dictated by vertical markets and brownfield solutions that aren't going away anytime soon. So it's a highly customized industry, IoT, and that's not a one-size-fit-all model.
Yeah, I'd echo both sentiments. in that hardware is really hard. IoT is hyper complex, and I think maybe slightly controversial in that has IoT overpromised, underdelivered for the last decade and a half? Maybe there's an argument. Largely, I think, and at Blues we're very lucky in that we work across all radio technologies, we work across all industries, so we get to see projects that are hyper successful, some that are in some cases less successful. And the sheer amount of decisions somebody has to make to connect an asset and build a connected device is quite frightening. So is there another world? Yes, where you can reduce the amount of decisions that somebody has to make and focus on the important ones. But as Dan's saying, right, there are so many vendors on the hardware side, the software side. How do you make those decisions? And I think events like the Things Conference and others help you understand the ecosystem and who can help simplify it, right? So yes, it's complex, but I think we're all here trying to make it a little bit easier, right?
Okay. Everything what the three of you just said, it makes like lots of sense, right? It's hard because hardware is involved, and within hardware, more components are involved. The value chain, like there are so many players in the value chain. So all these things make sense. But to be honest, we're telling each other about this already for years. And sometimes it's very contradicting because some people will say hardware is hard because I have to deal with multiple protocols, multiple connectivity technologies. While Paddy would say, no, hardware is not hard. That part of hardware is not hard because we made it easy. Yeah, and this is like the story of IoT development today. In the end, I think that we did expect and we were hoping for more adoption by 2024. Do you agree?
I don't know if we have any real figures on the actual adoption of IoT right now. So, I mean, Semtech is saying they sold a few hundreds of millions of a lot of chips. I mean, manufacturers like us are pretty open with where we're at. I think it takes time, but it's very often that we overpromise and underdeliver. We as Homo sapiens. And I think the era of IoT is just coming to be. At least in my space with smart buildings, we have so many regulations that are coming into play now that are going to require IoT. And if we want to be successful, we gotta be able to offer something easy, because I feel like IoT is siloed from other industries. You mentioned SCADA, BMS. Yesterday we talked with Mario from Thermocon. IoT seems to be like the thing for hackers. And I'm gonna get this module, I'm gonna connect this machine, but I'm gonna do it once, and I only have this knowledge. So. We tend to think about things like in our own context, and not really like if we're doing things for buildings, okay, let's not be super inspired and just create a device or a solution. Let's first look how the hell is this problem solved right now. Take inspiration from there, and also the thing about the value chain. You say he makes it easy. The hardware. You can only have so much players on a value chain until the project becomes too expensive for anybody to buy. So, I think that's a major factor.
So I would argue that IoT has actually been pretty damn successful over the last 10 years. Perhaps not quite the numbers that Ericsson had forecasted. Mind you, they did forecast a very big number, didn't they? But I'd say it's been pretty successful. As I said earlier on, we work with most of the leading companies in most every market segment you can imagine. Everything from chemical delivery, pest control, utility grid management, healthcare products. And I could be here till Christmas. And all of those companies share one thing. They want to be able to connect and digitize their assets. They want to get performance metrics off of those assets. They want to be able to create health and safety improvements. They want to be able to digitize and automate every part of their business. I mean, we're 25 years into the 21st century in the next few months. And what was the first 25 years like of the last century, the 20th century? It was nothing like it was in the 80s and the 90s, right? They were still dragging horses and guns around in the First World War. But by the end, everything had become electronic, everything was becoming more integrated. And I think over the next few years, you will continue to see all parts of industry digitize and automate their processes. And so the trick, I think, here is to just work with companies and partners who have a very clear vision of what they want and focus in and deliver it with them. It's not without its challenges, but we can't go back to the world of not having mobile phones. We can't go back to the world of not having computers, and we can't go back to the world where nothing was ever connected. So I'd say we're doing pretty damn well. It's a revolution. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, and Dan, you mentioned like what does the customer want? And I'm customer facing. I work very closely with our partners and customers who go from kind of ideation phase of a connected asset all the way to production, sometimes not all the way, right? And what does the customer want is a really hard thing to answer, because sometimes they don't know, right? And they look into us as vendors.
Sorry, but I can't hear you, sorry.
You can't hear me. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay, good. If you're a customer, sometimes you don't know what you want, and they look inwards to us as vendors to look for the answers, right? And we don't have all the answers because we do a specific part of, the value chain. So how do we work as an ecosystem to make it as easy as possible to adopt and to make projects successful? And success isn't always hyperscale, like deploying hundreds of thousands of devices. It's actually taking a really complex concept and just making it work, right?
Okay, I agree. Look, as long as there is growth, there is success, right? And things are going well. I mean, at this conference, you can see that the topics that we're discussing, it shows that it's maturing, right? But if you look at this, let me stick to what I see, my observation. Yeah. If I look at this conference and Embedded World and Mobile World Congress, those conferences where we come together, we sit on stage and we talk a lot about IoT. What I notice, and I still notice it today, I'm still noticing it right now, on stage we talk about those one of two projects that we have worked on and that scaled. But off the record, we speak about all those pilots that didn't scale to a commercial package. Isn't that something that we should talk about more in public to overcome the challenge?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we should educate in a nice way why some companies, and you could see it was a train wreck, but some companies didn't quite get there and others did. I mean, we did a bit of a thought leadership piece around a tale of two customers, right? One customer had a technological dream of how they were going to connect their chemical distribution business, their assets, and at a technical level, you couldn't afford it. I mean, it was great. Always on connectivity, know everything about your chemical distribution. And that enabled the chemical company to start doing more of an operating cash flow business rather than you buy chemical and you buy once, it costs once amount, you buy two, you buy another one, it's a CapEx model. So they moved more to an OpEx model, whereas their channel took these CapEx purchases and then they turned it into OpEx. So they turned that channel to market on its head, and salespeople weren't being remunerated quite in the same way that they had been, and it just took a long time for them to really get over a lot of those cultural adoption problems and make success. Other company decided to do it in baby steps. They connected the product, but only when you were perhaps in the building. They wanted to be in the building. They wanted a reason to upsell the facility management guy and bring him a 4-pack of beer and try and upsell him while they were in the building. They didn't want to be butted out of that with always-on connectivity. But of course, over time, during the pandemic, they had no time to go do all that work and figure out what was connected and where it was at. They wanted to spend all their time with the facility management guy, upselling him, and they then took the solution to an always-on connected model and embraced that. So a lot of cultural impacts when you make large technology changes. And so it's interesting sometimes to watch what look like two very similar organizations, one with a technical vision, the other one with a sort of baby steps lobster sort of pot model. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Some win and some are there for the long game where it just, pushes right up.
If I may, also,
Of course.
yeah. First, I hate POCs because it's a cheap way for a corp to say, okay, let's test something and maybe forget it later, or like to emulate some work. Second, I think there are many reasons why projects fail, and it's not always IoT. It's other types of projects also fail in their POC stage, and I think that's something normal. I think, as I said earlier, we aspire to do more. As humans, I think this is a internal. This is a trait that we have. We want to do a lot of things. Sometimes we get too much things on our plate, and then when it's time to kind of reorganize our time, we realize that something is not such a priority. So I would say, yes, of course, you see those POCs where they failed for some reason. You can really pinpoint why. But a lot of the POCs fail because of, for example, person problem, or problem about priorities on the other side of the table. And I think that's normal. I think it doesn't happen only in our industry. I think it's inherently when you're trying to sell something innovative. A lot of people might be interested because they want to pat you on the back and say, "Hey, yeah, nice, that's amazing." But it's hard to find those people that really mean business. And I think IoT makes it extra hard because when we talk about scaling IoT, also we talk about creating jobs for installers because we need those installers. That's the truth. If you're scaling a project with 20, 40, 50, 100,000 devices, you need a hell of a lot of people just to go install and make sure that it's okay. And again, going back to the complexity of LoRaWAN, I think so we are enablers at MClimate. We don't go in, we don't install. We just give products that can be used from other companies to build their own solutions or whatever. But what I see often overlooked is like essentially the installation process. Like an installation of a simple thing can take 5 minutes or it can take half an hour. And the reason might be super small, but this is what the management team is looking at and saying, we cannot scale this, so let's not go after the POC.
Yeah, I think POCs are a necessary evil, right? As a go-to-market person, they are the bane of, a deal cycle company because they're long. But the biggest piece of advice, and we're at the forefront of people building things and figuring out, can they work technically? Can they work commercially? Is there a market opportunity? The biggest piece of advice to make sure they're wildly successful would be work really closely with your technology vendors, accept the engineering help, the almost free consultancy in some senses to assess the viability of the product technically, but also commercially, is there a business case in whereby this POC is highly unlikely to be profitable, and that's very, very normal. But where do we amortize the cost of that? Can we justify it if it goes to market? And I think that's a big part of the reason for the failures is, there's not a success criteria against the commercial model of some of these things. They're nice to haves, right? They're hobbyists in some senses. That's one observation, but there are ways you can make these POCs more successful. And working with, your vendors is really important to do that.
So we worked on an insanely profitable POC with an oil and gas super major, just ridiculously profitable. It completely transformed one of the biggest cash outlays in the upstream oil and gas business. And 5 years later, it has not gone global. How could that be, right? Insanely profitable, this solution. Well, turns out IT want to be able to own it and manage it, right? I mean, it's oil and gas, it's critical infrastructure. They want a nice secure paradigm around how all of that is managed. Imagine working for an oil and gas super major, you know, what 1-800, the big oil company, when you got a support problem and you're out in the field, it's dirty, bad weather, stuff ain't working properly. Who'd you get on the phone to? And how long does it take for them to fix those kind of problems? Can take weeks sometimes, right? I mean, oil and gas is being pulled out of, you know, very remote locations. And so therefore, those guys, the business unit guys, they want all of that technology on-prem so that their guys can fix it, you know, whack it with a spanner and make it work again. But so you've got this tussle, you know, it's got to be centrally managed for security and cyber, you know, attack reasons. But the guys who are actually buying it and writing out the checks for all the equipment, they're wanting it all to be local and on-prem. So just classic rubs of different cultures in the organization that has delayed, you know, projects, I think, in heavy infrastructure and critical comms now for some years.
That was a great example. Oh.
Okay, but now we've talked a lot about those end customers who are already thinking about IoT and not even thinking, sometimes they're even trying it out with a POC or pilot, right? But I see lots of companies, for example, who could save so much money or improve their business operations significantly when they use the solutions from MClimate, for example. But these companies, when it comes to digital transformation, they're still figuring out how to work in Office 365. It's not the time yet to talk about IoT with them. And there are lots of these companies who are not even thinking about IoT yet. How to deal with that?
I think you gotta be patient first. I think we're getting to a moment where a lot of things are gonna get regulated, and IoT is gonna be there's gonna be a pull for IoT essentially because people will have to report some things, and I think patience is important. One of the biggest mistakes I did personally with MClimate is I started 10 years ago. 10 years ago, 2014, there was no market for smart homes or smart buildings. So I was essentially maybe 5 years later, earlier to the market. But I think you gotta be patient because, the policymakers are basically thinking they're not thinking how to utilize IoT. They're thinking, about other goals. But but IoT is gonna be part of the solution. So I think we're just at the beginning of the IoT market.
Yeah, I'd say the education piece is really important. And if the market is not ready to be thinking about digitizing assets and infrastructure, then like that is a time thing. Like, we're industry agnostic at Blues, so we see folks in agriculture, healthcare, industrial, and some move quicker than others. So there is a piece of you have to wait till the market's ready, but part of the job as well is also educating the value of digitizing. Is it better management of your infrastructure? Is it increasing or generating new revenue streams? Like more and more we see in-house innovation teams, and particularly big enterprises, whose job is to figure out how do we create a revenue stream, or how do we improve operational efficiency, and how do we use the data to do that? They have no data, right? So how do we get that? So that's if you can have folks thinking like that, the conversation's great for people like us because they're on that process already, right?
So it's interesting that you pick up on compliance, because I think compliance has really helped scale the LPWA business, the IoT business, certainly the LoRaWAN business. Look at supermarkets, for example. Cold chain management is something now that I think pretty much every supermarket, every quick serve restaurant in the world now employs that technology. They put temperature sensors inside refrigerators and freezers, LoRaWAN gateways to pull that data up into the cloud, into a compliance platform. It's saving the retail industry thousands of dollars per location. It's helping them get lower insurance costs for spoiled, damage. I mean, my fridge went out on me about a year ago, came down in the morning, water on the floor. There was like $300 of food in that fridge. Anybody else lose any food out there in the audience? Yeah, one or two of you. So you can imagine there's only thousands of dollars of food in those freezers. I mean, I don't know whether you've noticed, but the freezer section in your supermarket is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? This is where all the high value assets are sat. And so now that business is global. Every supermarket chain, every quick serve restaurant uses pretty much LoRaWAN sensors for a compliance use case. And that was driven by a clear business need and a clear set of requirements to achieve the objectives. So it's really a case about working with the leaders, using compliance to help drive the business case, and then the market follows.
If I may just add lastly, I think it's very important for you to know who is your client, to be focused on, to be able to differentiate different marketing personas, to just, define this. But it's important to also know who is not your client. Because people that are struggling with Office 365, maybe they're not ready for this. And maybe, however much I educate them, I'm not going to make any real profit out of them. So I think, policy is pushing so that people will have to start using such solutions. But I also think that at some point, you got to say, okay, this is not my type of client, so maybe I'm going to wait a few years until they become. Because we cannot push change. We can provide if somebody's pulling, but we cannot really push the change by ourselves.
Exactly. And the biggest question is, of course, while we are dealing with customers who are not ready or doing baby steps, how to make sure that we can pay our bills. But we've reached the end of this session. These guys are already for a very long time in IoT, and they will stick around for a very long time. So reach out to them directly because they have the answer. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.